Hello and welcome to Faith Talks, a monthly podcast that looks at various issues that face the church today and talks to some experts in that particular field to look at what their experience is and how that can inform and encourage and feed into the local church. So in this episode of Faith Talks, we're talking to Ollie Bennett.
Hello.
And Ollie, you are a pastor of Kingfisher Church. In fact, the pastor of Kingfisher Church in Tredworth in Gloucester.
Yeah.
So welcome. That's in the UK. So do you want to start this time together, just telling us a little bit about your story, how you came to be that pastor?
Because I didn't take the normal route to become a pastor. Is that the underlying message? Yeah, let me take you back.
There's a backstory.
There's definitely a backstory. So let me take you back to when I was 18.
Yes.
And I left school and I didn't do brilliantly at school. There was no way I was going to go to university. And at the time I applied to some colleges of higher education. Do you remember them? And they all turned me down. So academia was not going to be the path I was taking. And I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And I ended up working for a Christian organization just voluntarily for a year. And it was the London City Mission.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
And I was placed at a mission hall in Covent Garden.
Mm-hmm.
And their mission from that particular hall was to reach out to the homeless of the West End of London. And I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I just loved the time I was there. Worked with some brilliant people. And what I discovered was that everybody we met suffered from mental health issues.
Yeah.
And yes, for all sorts of reasons, that was one of them that had resulted in them ending up on the streets. And I thought maybe that is something I could do. So in 1988, I came to Gloucester to train as a registered mental nurse up at the old Coney Hill Hospital, as it was then. Doesn't exist anymore.
Remember it well.
And I trained there for 3 years. And soon after I finished my training, about a year later, Kingfisher Church started.
Yes.
And me and my wife, Rach, and our little baby daughter that we had at the time, we came along, and it was just as the church was starting.
Yes.
There was just a few of us in the back streets of I don't know, what was it? A tyre factory.
A tyre factory. Back room of a tyre.
So we've been part of our church for over 30 years.
Mm.
And it has been for us a life transforming place to be. But that was back then. We didn't know any of what was going to come. But let's fast forward 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm still working as a nurse. And by this time, I'm working as the manager of the drug and alcohol service in Gloucester.
Right.
And I was feeling really unsettled and believing that where God really wanted me to be was at our church full time. And I just couldn't work out how that was going to happen. I've been working alongside you a little bit more, started doing a little bit of the teaching and preaching in church. And we went away on a ministry trip to India at the end of 2013. And maybe it was something about getting away from everything that I knew, but it was such an alien environment to me. I'm not a traveler. But being that far away from home and away from all the distractions, it was a real time where I know you challenged me on a few things, but it felt like God was saying that now is the time where things need to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really believed going into 2014 that was the year that things were going to be different. But the months went by. You may well remember.
I do.
And it got to the middle of the year, June 2014. And me and Rach and the 3 children we now had were away on holiday together. And I was praying. I was saying, God, what's the wait? What's the wait? You know, I know where I want to be. I'm sure that's where you want me to be. But, you know, logistically, financially, the circumstances weren't coming together. And I was like, God, what am I waiting for? And I didn't hear an audible voice, but I heard in my head the words, Ollie, you're not waiting for me. I'm waiting for you.
Oh.
And it felt like one of those moments where I'm calling you to do this. You just need to take that step of faith.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so the following week, wow, firstly, I have to say, I did pray, God, that's great. I'm happy to do that, but my wife will never agree to that. you're going to have to talk to her. And actually that same week, she had said to me, I've been praying and I really believe God, well, whatever you decide you need to do, I'm with you, I'm supporting you. And it felt like that was my permission. So the following week I went back to work and I handed my notice in. And 9 weeks later, I gave up my career in nursing and I started working full time at our church.
Yes.
As the pastor of Kingfisher Church with alongside you. And not knowing how it was going to work out, not knowing whether, I'd ever be able to pay my bills again. Yet, 10 years later, God is faithful. And we're still here.
10 years?
10 years.
Goodness me.
Yeah, 10 years. So we're still here and we're still building in our little area of Gloucester.
Yeah.
And certainly still feel this is exactly where we need to be.
Absolutely.
That's what brought me to that place. Really.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, Kingfisher's mission statement is, I hope you remember this, being a pastor, is that we're here to reach lost people and see them transformed into fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. And that's what Kingfisher has always focused on trying to do. Now, of course, all sorts of people are lost. In fact, everyone who doesn't know Jesus is lost. But recently, the Lord has led you to a ministry to a particular group of people. In fact, to those who are ex-offenders in the criminal justice system. So can you tell us a bit about how that came about and what those first steps in the ministry was like? Because this is not a usual kind of ministry. It's quite a special ministry for a church to be in.
Well, again, it feels like a recent thing, but I believe that God has been preparing me for something like this for, well, probably most of the time I was working in mental health.
Yeah.
And I can take you back again 20 years ago, 2000 and over 20 years, 2003. And I was working in a mental health team. It was called Assertive Outreach. So you're working with people who are difficult to engage in treatment. And the people on my caseload were people with a serious mental illness who also had a dual diagnosis of drug or alcohol abuse.
Right.
And it was a new area for me, the area of addiction. And I had a small caseload. And there was one particular guy on my caseload called Rob, who we built quite a good relationship. And he was a very troubled young man. He had a diagnosis of schizophrenia. He was a crack and a heroin addict. And he had literally written himself off. And he said, there is nobody who can help me. Nobody. And, his life was a disaster.
Yeah.
It just was. And he said to me on one occasion, he said, Ollie, don't give up on me. And those words, they've stuck with me. In fact, they've haunted me all these years. They've driven me, I think, not to give up on the people who are so lost and so down and out.
Yeah.
Very tragically, soon after that, Rob was murdered.
Well, gosh.
And it was one of those moments in my life that I felt changed the direction of my life. And rather than just doing what I was doing, just surviving from day to day, just doing my job, I felt like I needed to take it more seriously and I needed to get educated. And I went and did an actual degree in substance misuse. So yes, you can do degrees in those sort of things.
3 years of substance misuse.
Yeah. No. And I ended up working for the Specialist Drug and Alcohol Service in Gloucester. And then I became the manager, like I said. And so this has been on my heart for a long time. And right back then when Rob died, I felt like God put on my heart this desire just to see somewhere where people like him could find hope and help for a transformed life. And so I've always kept my hand in, even since I gave up my career 10 years ago.
Yes.
Two specific things really is soon after I became the pastor, I was asked to become the trustee at Gloucester City Mission. It's a Christian organization in our city that works with the vulnerable people and especially the homeless. And so I've been working with them for a while. And also at church, we started a group called Celebrate Recovery, which was 12-step if you know the 12 steps from the likes of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's a worldwide organization. It was started by Christians, and just this process of trying to recover from addiction. Celebrate Recovery wasn't addiction based so much. It was church based, and it was for any hurt, habit, or hang up you could have. And we initially started it because there were people in our church that did have addiction problems, and I was looking for something church based that might help them. Actually, over the years that we did it, I found it really beneficial for myself. And actually dealing with some of my stuff.
Yes.
That I needed to deal with, and just having that accountability and support. And I was part of running Celebrate Recovery for 7 years.
Yeah.
And then back in last year, 2023, where I was coming to a natural end. There was other people stepping in. There's another Celebrate Recovery group that runs in Gloucester now. And I was asked to get involved in some work at Gloucester City Mission alongside a new member of staff. He was setting up a recovery group, and it was like really early engagement for people.
Yeah.
And we called it Embrace, and it's literally sitting around the table, having a meal together and talking about recovery issues. And we've seen real change in people, which brings me to a guy called John. So I'm getting there. John, he came out of prison in September 2023 after serving about 3 years, I think. And he was placed in a place called the Rycroft approved premises. It's probation. It's like a halfway house.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah.
And it's specifically for people who are considered high risk, just to release into the community. And John had found faith when he was in prison. And he came out of prison, and he wasn't from Gloucester. So he didn't have a lot of people that he knew in Gloucester. And he says he was feeling lonely, and he was feeling bored, two of the biggest risk factors for relapse. So he prayed, God, would you send me somebody? 20 minutes later, someone contacted him over Facebook Messenger. And it was a guy that they'd known each other previously. And it was somebody that knew us as a church. And they went to see him, and they said, I know where I'm going to take you. And they brought him down to church. So John came, and he's been with us ever since, and he's doing amazing. He's just celebrated his first year of sobriety.
Oh, wow.
Which is incredible.
Yes.
And we had the privilege of baptizing him last New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And John, so he's been with us now for a while, and he started bringing people to church, other people that were at the Rycroft. One of John's biggest issues, actually one of the biggest issues for many people coming out of prison, is accommodation.
Yeah.
Somewhat safe and secure. And John was starting to get very anxious about his time at the Rycroft was coming to an end. He didn't have anywhere to go. Everywhere he applied to either was full up or wouldn't take him because of his history. And so we prayed, God, come on. We believe that you've got somewhere for John. And John had started coming along to our Embrace group at Gloucester City Mission. This is where the connections are making sense.
Yeah.
The very next day to when he'd come along to Embrace, the lady at Gloucester City Mission had a phone call from a housing provider.
Yeah.
That said they'd had this referral from a man called John. And did she know him? And she said, well, I don't know him, but I have met him.
Right.
Just.
Yeah.
And they said, should we give him a chance? And she said, yes, absolutely. And so he got accommodation literally a couple of days after we prayed this prayer. And so anyway, that was amazing. And then John started bringing other people to church from the Rycroft. And so, we don't know what the risks are that people are coming out of prison with. We don't know their history necessarily, except for what they tell us.
Yeah.
And so I contacted the manager of this approved premises. And over the last few months, we've built up a really close sort of partnership.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's very keen that the residents at her place get support, because many of them coming out of prison, very anxious. They don't have family around here, or they don't have family full stop. And the only people they know are the people that they used to associate with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she's very keen to get people in who can give them a different circle of community, really.
Yeah.
And so we start
to go into Rycroft.
Yeah, we go into the Rycroft every Tuesday, just a couple of us.
Yeah.
Just to meet the residents and to be a friendly face.
Yeah.
And to offer to meet them outside if they need to have a coffee or something like that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them don't have anything to do during the day.
So can I just ask, what are some of the challenges in that ministry, and I guess what have been some of the real triumphs?
Yeah. Well, the challenges for us are a lot of the residents that come there are transitory. So they're not from around here. They've just been placed there because that's the only bed
Yeah.
available. They're often not from Gloucester. So they'll be with us for 3 months and then they're gone. So we have a limited amount of time really to input into them.
Yeah.
A number of them have come along to church while they've been there, which is just been fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a triumph of seeing that. I've seen grow in faith, some of them.
Yeah.
The manager, if she knows that someone has faith, she will specifically refer them to us.
Yeah.
If there are others with specific support needs, she will get in touch and say, can you come and meet this particular person? So that's been some of the triumphs, I think.
Yeah.
Challenges, yeah, transitory, but also it's a real challenge for people coming out of prison. Real lack of support, real lack of coordination between services. And again, trying to build up new relationships with people when you have a history of offending is not easy.
No.
And people are, rightly so, suspicious, and so it's learning to try and build that friendship, those relationships in a way which is
So I mean, how have you done that? Because I'm guessing if you had like a church full of ordinary people, and then suddenly you're getting people who've come out of prison, coming along to church. That must be a bit of a challenge for some people.
I expect it could be.
Not that
No, I know it is. I know that people have legitimate questions.
Yeah. How are you?
But for the most, people have been extremely welcoming.
Right.
It's been so good to see.
Yeah.
And what's great about some of these guys is they are the ones who want to volunteer.
Yeah.
They want to get involved. They want to bring people
So
to church.
just send some of them along to my church.
So I think that challenges the church in other ways.
Yeah.
Not just in who are these people with these histories coming into our safe space, but actually these are people challenging, why am I coming to church?
So regarding the people that we're talking about, and who have come to faith, and I think you've had a number of ex-convicts who have come to faith, and they've been baptized. You mentioned one who was baptized on New Year's Eve, which is wonderful. I think you've had some others as well. Are there particular themes in those people's testimonies? Because as you baptize people, people give their testimony first and then they get baptized. I wonder about those themes. Are there any sort of things that link these stories?
Often they come from very fragmented family backgrounds.
Right.
Often there is a history of addiction.
Yeah.
And obviously because of the sentences they've served, there's a history of offending. So so those are, I guess, the three main things. But it's a history of not fitting in, not having family support. And that's one of the challenges, is often people who come from a background where they have not been nurtured and they've not been loved or cared for. That when they do encounter it, they don't trust it initially. They're suspicious of it. They wonder what you're after. And so it takes a bit of time to build up that sense of trust that actually, the Christian community, when it's working well, is, that it is a safe place, and it is a place where you can let your guard down, and it is a place where you can find some transformation. And that is what we're just beginning to see. Because, it's been a year, almost a year since John came, and then we've had other people come along since. So it's really early days, really. The church, I feel, has really stepped up and has been very hospitable, very welcoming. In terms of safeguarding, obviously that's huge.
Well, that was going to be another question, really, because for us to be real about this, it is not just a story we're reading in a Christian paperback. we live in the real world, and so there must be some real safeguarding issues.
Yeah,
You
of
want to
course.
just speak about that a bit and how you've approached that
Yeah.
and dealt with
Well,
things.
we're working it out as we go along.
Right.
What's been really helpful is that the I guess if anybody new comes to your church, you don't know their background.
No,
You don't know what
that's true. Yeah.
so it applies to everybody, but especially if somebody is coming from like a probationer premises and you know they have a history of offending,
Yeah.
it's really helpful to know what that involves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the manager has been really helpful on a need to know basis
Mm.
of telling us what
Mm.
risks we are maybe encountering with people.
Sure.
Most of the people, I think all of the people we've met, it's usually around acquisitive crime or violence,
What's acquisitive crime?
robbing, thieving.
Oh, that sort of crime.
Yeah.
Okay.
And with violence within that.
Mm.
But it's always drug or alcohol fueled.
Yeah.
And I think when the people that we've met who are working on their recovery and
Yeah.
they're sober,
Yes.
the risks are a lot lower.
Yeah.
But if anybody does come to our church from the Rycroft, we make sure that they are buddied up with somebody.
Oh, no, that's an important thing because there needs to be some kind of accountability, I guess. So you'd assign someone not to be I guess to be a jailer, but
No,
to be a
just to be a friend, just to sit with them in church, just to make sure they're okay. Because actually, coming into a church environment is a scary thing for a lot of people.
Sure.
And especially if you haven't known that previously, church can feel like a very strange place to be.
Yeah.
So just for their own benefit, really, of having someone they can sit with and talk to and ask
Yeah.
questions of,
Yeah.
that's been really helpful. But also means that, we don't have people wandering the building on their own or
Right.
any of that sort of stuff.
Okay, that's really helpful. So what would you say to pastors, leaders who feel the Lord might be leading them to reach out to similar groups of people? I mean, there are there are so many people that the church isn't reaching, but is being called to reach. So, what would you say to pastors around the world that are listening to this? And really, I suppose tied in with that is what lessons have you learned that could help others?
From a personal point of view, I think when I became the pastor at Kingfisher Church, I think it's very easy just to get caught up in church life.
Mm.
And I remember hearing a preacher saying once that we're not called to be keepers of the aquarium, but to be fishers of men. So you can get caught up in the politics of church and just be focused on everything going on within those four walls. I think very quickly, because of my background and the training I'd had, I didn't want to lose that connection. And I felt it was really important to get beyond our four walls and get out and meet people where they are. Because like I've just said, just somebody, especially when they're feeling anxious and vulnerable when they've just come out of prison, to turn up to a church on their own is a big ask. So we need to go and meet people where they are at. I mean, that is what Jesus did. Go out and meet people where they are at. And so it's great that we've had this opportunity where we can go into this place and actually meet people and invite them and actually meet them outside and take them into our church building so it feels like a safer environment. So that's one thing. Also, there's some great organizations which are around at the moment who try and link churches together who are open and welcome to prison leavers. There's one called the Welcome Directory. It's a national database of churches.
This, of course, is in the UK.
It's in the UK, yeah.
There may well be organisations in other countries.
Yeah, for sure. But certainly in the UK, there's one called the Welcome Directory, which we're registered with now. And it's so that people, if they're coming out of prison, they can, they know where they're going to be placed. If they've got faith, they can look up and say, what churches are going to be open to me coming along? And then they can get in contact. So, but there's other organizations that do training for churches. There's one particular organization down in Bristol. It's not too far away from us here in Gloucester. That's called I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. They offer sort of training programs for churches who are thinking about and getting involved in prison ministry. Obviously, we don't have a local prison to us. Gloucester Prison, it closed down many years ago. But there are other prisons in the area, and so we encourage people to contact the prison chaplains because often they are in touch with the people who are coming out.
So the overall message here is, don't think you've got to have all the answers, do it all on your own.
That's right.
And the importance of reaching out to other organizations. But I'm guessing, if I'm just thinking about maybe countries where those organizations don't necessarily exist, but I guess just reaching out to the prison service, because the incidences of reoffending are really high. So if there is any way in which that reoffending rate can be lowered, then prison services will be very keen to be part of that. But so it's about looking around at who can we partner with, who can we look to for support, and just be part of the solution.
Yeah, for sure.
Would be a really good thing.
So prisons are very open to faith organizations going, because it's often the faith organizations that make all the difference. That's just some of the testimonies we've heard of people who've been in prison. You know, the prison guards, the establishment don't have time for you. They don't have time to sit and talk to you. The people that do are the prison chaplains. And often it is those relationships that have brought people to faith. And they're really keen for churches to get involved.
Yeah. So have you ever had cause to regret getting into this? Well, perhaps I should say, have you ever had cause to regret becoming a pastor?
I'm sure I have, but I can't think of anything specific right now. In terms of, this area of work, when you're working with vulnerable people, you're working with people who have histories of addiction. And, these are complicated, complex issues, and they're not changed easily overnight. And often relapse is part of the process. Often people do well for a time and then they don't. And it's learning not to take that personally.
Right.
And also, recognizing often it is a thankless job. And I heard someone recently, just last week, there's a podcast I was listening to, and she's saying, you don't love people because you think they're going to change. You love people because they're worth it, whether they change or not.
Yes.
Our job as Christians is to show people the love of God, that they are worth it, whatever they then do with it.
And I'm aware of as Jesus saying in Matthew's gospel, whatever you do for one of the least of these, you do for me.
Absolutely.
And that must be a real motivator as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess just going back to something else you said earlier, but it is worth emphasizing, I think, that we all have habits, hurts and hangups. The difference being between people is that maybe for most of us, we successfully keep it hidden. And so people could look at us and say, oh, I love them in my church. They look so together and ordinary and normal. And with the people that you've been reaching out to, people who've come out of prison and so on, it's all there for people to see. And in one sense, that can be a really refreshing thing, can't it? That there's no hiddenness in that. And so I guess the challenge for pastoring a church is to realize that everybody has fallen short. Everybody struggles.
And it can be a really exposing thing when you've been up in court and you've served a sentence and you've coming out, and we don't go up to anybody in church and just ask them to tell us their deepest, darkest secrets. No. We wouldn't do that. So I guess it's having that sensitivity when people come to your church. It's not like, oh, what were you in prison for? It's probably not your opening statement. But definitely, you're welcome here. How can we help? How
Yeah.
can we support you?
Yeah.
Those are the questions we want to be asking.
Yeah. And those are the questions that people want to hear as well, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, so it must be just such a wonderful moment when you baptize someone who's had this this huge journey,
Yeah.
and they know they've got a journey
Ahead of them. And I think sometimes we forget that. We know that the verse that says, in Christ you're a new creation, the old is gone, the new has come. But
Yeah.
when somebody becomes a Christian, when you baptize them, it's just the start of their journey. Like you said, they are like babies in Christ.
Yeah.
And we don't expect babies to act grown up. So it's recognizing that, some of the people we see, they're gonna be raw, and they're gonna need to fall over a few times and get up and keep trying.
Yes.
We need to be there to keep encouraging them.
Yeah. Well, we've just about run out of time on this, but there's a lot more that could be said. And I'm just thinking that if you are listening to this, watching this, and you'd like some more information or to talk through particular things in a bit more depth, I'm guessing that people can contact you, can email you.
Yeah, sure.
This is Pastor Ollie, and you can get hold of him at
Ollie Bennett.
okay, OLLIEBENNETT.
Ollie Bennett at kingfisher.org.uk.
There we are. Ollie, thank you so much. And this is an amazing ministry. Thank you so much for pioneering this. And how long have you been a pastor now?
10 years.
10 years and half an hour.
Yeah, that.
Thank you so much for the work that you do, the calling that you responded to, and taking time to talk to us on Faith Talks.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.